That's your we're live noise.
What's that?
I said that's your live noise, right?
What's that?
Hey, hey, hey.
We are live. Love it. Love it, I love it, I love it. Looking forward to this discussion this morning. This is actually one of my favorite discussions. It's one of my absolute favorites.
I think you say that about all of them.
Well, they're all my favorites. I got a lot of favorites.
Yeah, I know you do.
I know. And this one is really, sorry for the background noise there, folks, as I'm moving my microphone. But yeah, this really is one of my favorite parts of the whole personal growth process. The repeat. If you don't have a repeat, everything just dies.
Well, that means there's an end if you don't repeat.
If you don't repeat, it comes to an end. It just dies. So that's why this is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing is repeat. And a lot of people miss this part in the personal growth process because, well, they just forget that personal growth is a process. It never comes to an end. It should never come to an end. We should always be growing and moving to the next level.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Rebecca.
We've got about a minute before.
We've got a minute?
We maybe want to wait just 50 seconds.
50 seconds. But according to my watch, we're on time.
Well,
yeah, we're right on time. So we want to be right on time, right? We want to be right on time. So we are right on time. Here we are. Let's talk about it. Rebecca, launch this off. What are we talking about?
well, like you already said, we are talking about the last step in the 6 steps of the personal development, and that's repeat. So we've talked about awareness, commitment, learn, implement, evaluate, and now repeat. And repeat, I guess we should have looked up the dictionary definition of what it is, but it sums up into do it all again.
It does. Why don't you look that up? And I will, because it'd be good to know, right? Good to know what the dictionary says repeat means. Yes. But here's, while you're doing that, we'll do a quick review. You want to do that?
Okay.
So step number 1 in the personal growth process, awareness. You have to have awareness. Before we go any further, what'd you find? What's repeat mean?
Repeat says do something again either once or a number of times.
More than once. So again, in the personal growth process, step number 1, awareness. You want to be aware of what is around you, aware of what you want to improve on, aware of what you want to make better. And there's some very specific steps that we can go through in that. You can go back and watch the video on it. We did talk a little bit more about it. But there's also many things that we didn't discuss. The big thing around awareness, though, is increasing that personal awareness around you, being self-aware of what you want to truly improve on.
I think there's something I want to add to that on awareness. I don't think it's just being aware of what you want to improve on, but your why.
That's a good point.
Why is it? I mean, you have to be aware of your why. Why are you improving on something? Why are you making these changes? Why is it that you want? What are your wants? What do you want out of it? You want to make these changes, but why do you want to make these changes? What are your wants? And I think that's not something that we focused on when we talked about it, because we talked about being aware of the things you want to change. But I don't think if you understand and are aware of your whys, it's hard to make those changes. Mm-hmm. You can say till you're blue in the face, I want to change this or I want to change that. But why do you want to do that?
Right. So step number 1, though, is awareness. That's a great point. Why do you want to change something? Why do you want to make something different? What do you want? Those elements, very, very key. What's step number 2?
Commit.
Commit. Why is that step so important?
That's a hard one. But it is important because if you don't commit to it, you can be aware of it as much as you want to, but it'll never change. You have to commit and you have to make that commitment.
A commitment is hard. It is really hard, actually. So we can dive deeper into that on another session. Step number 3,
Learn.
learn. That's the easy part, right?
No. Well, for some people.
I think it's the fun part. I love the learning part, but there's a risk there. If you get caught up in with just the learning part, you don't make it to the next step, which is what?
Implementation.
Implementation. Learning for learning's sake has zero value. Doesn't matter. If you learn something just to learn something other than your own self-entertainment, if you don't do anything with it, what value does it have? Honestly, if you do not implement, nothing changes.
Yep, I agree.
And then
Evaluate.
step number 5 is evaluate. Evaluate. We talked about that last week. The thing that I love about evaluate is the word value right in the middle of it. Evaluate. You're identifying where you increased value. You've made a difference. Your implementation changed something, made something better. That's an evaluation. And man, I love that part. And that leads us to today.
To repeat.
Repeat.
Do it all over.
Do it all over again. So now you go back to the beginning and look at awareness. But if you follow this process, what's going to happen when you evaluate and repeat? Where is your awareness going to be the second go around?
Oh, it'll be a lot higher.
gonna
At
be
least I
higher.
would hope it would be higher.
It's going to be higher because you have gone through the process. So if you start out with an awareness level at like 4, right? Then you're going to raise that depending on how diligent you were, how big of a step you took, how big of a implementation you had. You go from 4 to 5, but even going from 4 to 4.5 is a big step,
Right.
right? It's better. You're measuring it. You're going forward. You're going up. You have a higher level of awareness. That higher level of awareness just gives you a higher opportunity, realistically.
Yep.
So one of the things we're going to do in the next few weeks, I think it starts next week, right?
Yes, next week we start with the new
A new series next
series.
week. So what really excites me about that is we're going to be talking about this subject of awareness and repeating the cycles of personal growth over and over and over. But in the next 15 weeks, we're going to dive deep into some fundamental laws that make personal growth and development much, much more successful, right? And once you have those laws, once you have that understanding, once you have that in your heart and your mind, repeating is just so much easier. Got people jumping in here. There we go. So, what about you, Rebecca? You've given some thought to repeat. What do you think about when you hear the term repeat in the personal growth process?
Well, because, like we've talked about, you can't just change one thing and then stop and think that everything's going to blossom and grow from there. Mm-hmm. You've got to continually plant the seed, water it, give it nutrients, and grow it. It's something new all the time. And
It never stops.
It never stops.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is a personal thing. It's not like somebody's going to continuously tell you all the time, you need to change this, you need to change that, and hopefully they're not, hopefully that's not the case. But a lot of it is an internal job that you have to focus on all the time.
What do you mean by that? Internal job?
It's your personal growth, the things that you want to get better at, the things that you want to be more, communication is a big thing for me. And I'm not great at it, but I'm aware of it and I'm continually working on it. Does that mean once I hit that evaluate and repeat that I don't work on communication anymore? No, absolutely not. It's a continuous cycle.
It never, you don't want it to stop, right? The thing that I've found, so a little background on me, well, on us, but it was more my fault than it was yours.
What was that? Wait, what'd you just say?
A background on us.
It's repeat day, remember?
Yeah.
Repeat.
So when we went back and you look back at our history, we've had a bankruptcy. Our business really struggled. We had a fire in our business. We had a fuel business, and our fuel truck started on fire. That was an interesting one. That was a very interesting day
Yeah.
as a whole when you have a gas truck start on fire. That was fun. Yeah, that was exciting. Anyway, we went through several of these things, and through that process, you and I were not studying personal development at that time. We were not personally working on ourselves. We learned how to work hard. What I learned growing up, you work hard. Hard work is going to get you great results. It actually didn't work out that way. Not as an entrepreneur, not as a leader. It didn't actually work out that way. It ended up being detrimental. The hard work was literally killing me to the point where I couldn't think. I wasn't able to use my brain as a business owner the way that I needed to, and it ended up being very, very, ended up being a failure for us in that way, a big, big, big learning step, a failure step. And during that experience, I was introduced to one concept that John Maxwell said, that everything rises and falls on leadership. And I'll tell you honestly, the first time I heard that phrase, I did not agree with it in any way, shape, or form, because I was the leader of our company, and when we went bankrupt, I was not about to take ownership in that, because we had other people who filed bankruptcy on us, and it just caused this chain reaction. So I kept pointing fingers at them. I kept pointing fingers at other things, at other people. And it took me a long time, a matter of weeks anyway, for me to really accept that everything rises and everything falls on leadership. Because I finally had to ask myself the question, what if the company would have been really successful? Then I would have agreed with John's term, everything rises on leadership, because I would have looked at myself and got, man, you're just so awesome, you're so amazing, and it would have been like, yeah, absolutely, I'm a great leader, blah, 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 blah. But I went the other way, and I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to accept that. When I finally did accept that, when I realized that that failure was on me, I have to own that failure. When I owned that failure, that's when I began to really personally grow and develop, because I had to start asking questions like, even though someone declared bankruptcy on us, what could we have done differently? What could I have done differently? How could I have responded differently? What could I have changed? Even though I couldn't change those circumstances per se, what could I have changed that gave us a different outcome, that would have provided a different outcome? When I started to realize that the questions I asked myself, though that was my first experience in really going through the process of personal growth and development. Following that, I got into the book Think and Grow Rich. I started looking at how I truly think about things in life, started going through a lot of other phases in my own personal life, and realized that, man, without this process, without some kind of a process for personal growth, I was not going to be successful. I wasn't going to be the person I needed to be. And the crazy part was, Rebecca, we didn't have any mentors back then, did we? We didn't have anybody telling us this stuff.
Well, I did, but you didn't. I had you.
Yeah, but I was just learning. I mean, that was a detrimental time for us. I mean, it was a
Well,
tough time.
we talked about, I don't know if this is kind of off the subject of where we're talking about today on repeat, but, you know, back in those times, for me growing up, when I looked at somebody who was wealthy or somebody who was prosperous or successful, I looked at actors and I looked at singers, somebody who was in the entertainment industry. We didn't talk about people like John Maxwell and Grant Cardone, and we didn't discuss. I mean, that was not something that was in our textbooks, or that was not somebody that we even knew who they were. So someone like that, even living in a small town, you thought success was the person that had the biggest farm, or success was the person that owned the bank, or something like that. We didn't have these mentors. We didn't talk about these successful people, because that to growing up back then, that wasn't success for us. Success in our eyes was, like I said, the entertainment industry. We didn't consider people in power, maybe the president at the time or that. But there's been, I mean, Warren Buffett's been around for how many years doing what he's been doing. But he wasn't somebody that we studied at that time. At that time, Warren Buffett was just, he was not a name that we knew. And so when you talk about having mentors, it wasn't until you started getting into reading some leadership books and things like that before I even understood what that looked like. We have somebody set a
It's
chat message.
Can you see it? You want to just take care of it? So it's interesting that when we look at these elements, John Maxwell has been a very big influence in my life. But these steps, these 5 steps you just mentioned, Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett was actually one of the reasons that I really started looking at a personal growth process, a personal growth plan. These 6 steps of awareness, commitment, learning, implementation, evaluate, and repeat was actually triggered by the statement of Warren Buffett's when he says the greatest investment you'll ever make is an investment in yourself. Well, I didn't understand that.
Well, how
It's a
many
great
people
phase,
did?
but-
I mean, how many people do? So I'm not gonna get into a whole education system discussion, but going through school, way back yonder when I was in school, we had home ec. So we learned to sew and we learned to do some cooking, which I didn't, and I did pass the class, but not with an A. Sorry, babe. But so I didn't learn. But that's what they teach you. They don't teach you to. I mean, in what class can you remember in high school that taught you to grow yourself? What class, the guys usually went to the shop class and the girls went to the home ec classes, but it was about learning skills, which is great because you have to have skills, but it wasn't about growing yourself personally.
It wasn't about the focus on who you are. It was the focus on what you do.
Right.
And that's the education system. The educational system focuses on what you do, not who you are. And that's why when we go into our sales training, for example, leadership in sales, the whole first day is who are you? Who
Now,
are they?
I do think that some of the schools now are trying to implement that. They do have leadership classes. They do have, I think the FFAs and the even 4-H, they're working on building those skills. So I do think it's getting better. But when I do look back at our school years, it was more of the what you do.
Yeah, yeah. Brad made an interesting statement in his message here. He says, "When I take responsibility, I gain control and take away the victim mentality." That is critical. That is critical. When we are willing, Brad, that's an amazing statement, by the way. It really, really is, because that's what I had to do when I first read Everything Rises and Falls on Leadership. I had to own it. And that was hard to do. I was the victim because we went bankrupt because somebody else went bankrupt, and the chain reaction hurt us. And as a result, we ended up losing because somebody else was losing. That was a victim mentality. Very
Well,
negative
it's
mindset.
hard to look back on yourself personally and think, if I'd have done something different, this would have come out differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to look at that inner evaluation
Yep.
and realize that the things that you do and the things that you say and the things that you don't do
Yep.
is maybe a cause or a even just a little bit of a shred of it could be a cause, but taking that internal view is difficult.
Yeah, it is. Okay, well, we're going to open this up for questions from our Zoom people. If you're on Facebook, feel free to post a question. Also, we can see your messages there. If you're on YouTube, post a message. That would be awesome. But yeah, let's open this up. Let's get some feedback from people. What about this process? 'Cause the purpose of repeat before anybody jumps in, I think back to that time, the reason that I told the story of our fuel business. When I think back to that, when I first started studying personal growth and development, had I not repeated it, had I not studied things like Warren Buffett and others, had I not repeated the processes, I wouldn't be even remotely close to where I am today.
Well, and I think one of the if you're repeating the same process, I mean, if you're becoming aware of something that you're doing, and when you repeat, you still have to work on that same thing,
Yeah.
over and over again. You've got to ask yourself when you get to the evaluation part, what am I missing, or what is it that I'm not changing? I mean, and so yeah, your repeat needs to be maybe something else, or you need to ask yourself, okay, what am I missing? What am I?
Well, that's why the awareness comes in,
Yeah.
right? You have to do it at a different level of awareness. All right. Anybody on our Zoom call got some thoughts, comments? Love to hear from you guys.
Hey, Karen and Rebecca.
Good morning.
It takes me back to when I first started out, like first, I guess, real job working in sales. And I've never done sales. I've done a PhD. I was a scientist. But that kind of scientific approach to it, I guess I spent 3 weeks on the road with the boss, the CEO, who was a sales guy, who was kind of training me. But he didn't prompt it, but it was something I did after every time I gave a pitch. It's like, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And then it kind of craft it and then do it again the next day. And then, I mean, we were on the road, as I said, for 3 weeks, and then another 2 weeks after that. There was this constant evaluation after every time I did it. And I got better. It was just something that seemed very natural. It's like after every meeting, most people do a post-meeting meeting. How'd we go? Let's evaluate. And so we're kind of using that process anyway. What's the next steps? Blah, blah, blah. What do we have to do that's, set a new set of goals? And so you evaluate and then you implement. But so I guess every time I hear you talk, I kind of try and slot that into my own experience and think, do I do that? Don't I do that? Where could I do it? And yeah, I guess that's how I started out, but I also grew very quickly doing that by evaluating, by listening and evaluating. And it was a crash course, but it was that exact process that helped me get better quickly at something.
Yeah, David, that's a really foundational element. I don't know what you turned up, but that got hot, didn't it? that's a foundational element, David. What you're talking about is that recognition, recognizing that there's something to be improved. How did that change you at the personal level, like the personal development side? How did that change who you are, not just what you did? How did that change who you are?
You've got to be open to criticism and take it as constructive. And so it's always hard to evaluate yourself. And so that's where a coach comes in, because it's much easier. And I guess if you've got a coach, then you're already seeking out change. And so that's already awareness. And so, that first step of being aware of the problem, a lot of people, or a lot of times, I guess in my own life, I'm probably still not aware of things that are a problem. But when you do, when you become aware, then I find it harder to coach myself. I think everyone does. So you got to seek out that evaluation. But it's something that I've always tried to do, that just be critical of myself. What did I do right or wrong? And it's just so much easier if you can ask somebody, so what do you think? And not be too thin-skinned about it. Just seek it out as constructive.
Well, I find that if I ask somebody else, they're not as harsh on me as I am on myself. I get very critical of myself, and sometimes it's just in my head, but I think I'm doing things worse than I really am. So sometimes it is kind of nice to hear somebody else's opinion, because it's not as bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's real too. My daughter kind of is very hard on herself like that, and is the worst judge. And sometimes she won't listen to sort of positive criticism, and so not all evaluation is negative. Sure.
Yeah,
but that's another thing about coaching.
Well, it is important. So there's two things here that I was just aware of as David was saying that. There's two ways that we can look at this, and one of the ways that David mentioned it, which is extremely important in our day-to-day lives, is evaluating what we do. Like you mentioned, the sales process, the what we do elements are extremely important. The other element, though, is the who you are and who you are becoming. That is the one that really changed things for me. In fact, it was one of the leadership trainings that I was in. It wasn't John Maxwell, but it was one of the people that was on stage with John. He made the statement. He said, "A leader is something that you are. It's not something that you do. You have to be a leader first before you can lead." And he explained the difference between developing yourself as the person, the who you are, developing that alongside of or in front of the what you do. Leadership is what you do. Leadership is what you implement, but being a leader is part of who you are. That's a big difference. So when you're looking at your skills of the who you are versus the what you do, you got to be able to recognize, hey, this is a what I'm doing aspect. I'm aware of that, and versus this is a who I am aspect. One of the things that I learned as a speaker, I wanted to be a speaker. I want to be a speaker. I want to speak on stages. I want to encourage people in that environment. Well, a speaker is somebody, is someone. So if I was to look at myself as a speaker, as the who I am, as a speaker, as a presenter, what does that look like? Can I see that person in my mind? What's that person look like, sound like, feel like? It's that who you are there. That's a different level of development than in the what I do. I've had to learn both, but I want to be able to make sure that I'm growing both of those together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an important part of what David brought up is, You know, you have to learn certain things about what you do. But that's oftentimes what gets us into management roles, not leadership roles.
Well, I think it all goes hand in hand.
It does. It does. It really does.
I mean, and I don't think you can focus on one thing and not the others, because I think, like we said,
it goes hand in glove.
Yeah.
Yep. Got to grow them together. But it's recognized, and it's able to recognize that, hey, I've been focused so much on what I do. I need to probably look at a little bit more of who I am.
Well, and that, that comes back, and I will bring up you and I again.
Because we're just so good together.
Yep. But being aware, because I'm very aware of the things that you do, and it took me a very, very long time to be very aware of the things that I do. The things that not only in our business relationship, but our marriage relationship, and just becoming aware of who I am in that relationship, the whole thing. And it's hard, when we talk business, there's so many things that you can change in business, because business is an ever-changing. But you personally, it's hard to reflect on that and know that I'm not perfect.
What did you say?
Yes, I did. It's recorded, and I am the first one. Well, not the first one to admit I'm not perfect.
Live-streamed.
I know. Everybody heard it. I'm not perfect,
Live-streamed.
and I know that. But it did, and it's not to say that I was thinking I was perfect before, but I did think I had all the answers. I did think I knew what was best, and becoming aware of that and working on it every day is, when it comes to the personal stuff that you work on, that's hard.
It is.
It's hard to dig deep.
It is. It's very, very hard, and yet it's so important. And those are the things that we want to talk about, this nonstop, continuous growth. That's what I love about the repeat conversation. And we'll start wrapping this up, but it's that repeat element simply means that you're going to tell yourself internally that I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. I'm going to continue this cycle. I'm going to continue this cycle of positive improvement. I'm going to continue this cycle of getting better. I go back to leadership and sales. Leadership and sales. If you guys have not attended leadership and sales, you need to attend leadership and sales, because that program is designed to address the who you are as a salesperson. And everybody sells. I don't care if you're selling your kids on eating healthy food. I don't care if you're selling your spouse on where you want to go eat or on what kind of clothes you want to buy. It doesn't matter what you do. You've got to learn how to influence the sale, influence to decision. And that's really what we talk about in leadership in sales, just the concept, the leadership in sales program. I highly recommend you come into that, because it's this nonstop, continuous improvement, because your competition is not who sells something different than you. Your competition was you yesterday. It doesn't matter what your competition sells. It doesn't matter what your competition does. It's what matters is who personally grows the fastest. Who's going to grow the fastest? And if you're focused on improving you every single day, if you're focused on improving you all the time, using this system, awareness, commitment, implement, you use this system all the time and never stop using it, I will promise you, you will outgrow your competition so fast, but you have to stay consistent. You have to stay in it. You have to keep going. You have to look at yourself yesterday and say, I am better today. That is our leadership in sales. That is what we do. You are going it can make a commitment to yourself that you are going to be the leader in this space, in whatever you sell, whatever you do, wherever you're at, you're making a commitment that you here, this person is going to be the best that I can be every single day, which means I have to be better than I was yesterday. That's the only competition you should ever focus on. And this system will make sure that that person right here never stops growing. That's how you win. That is how you win. And when you put teams together, when you have teams of people that are doing that very thing together as a team, failure is not an option.
Nope.
Not an option. So that's the power of the repeat system, the power of thinking the right way, the power of getting into the right frame of mind to win. So I think that's a good wrap up to this whole session, isn't it?
Yep. So join us next week. We're going to have 15 weeks of a growth plan.
15 weeks of a growth plan, an exciting growth plan. We are going to be following John Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws. We're not going to deep dive into every single chapter. I think that's a mastermind down the road. But what we do want to highlight is the elements of why you want to do this and what are the steps to get started.
Yeah.
It goes right in line with these 6 steps, the 6-step process. See, these 6 steps is the plan. The 15 laws are the fundamental elements that you want to plug into the plan.
Yep.
That's what it boils down to.
It's
So
the steps,
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. This is exciting.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Yep. Make it awesome.
We'll see you next Monday.
God bless.